And that's the perfect way to start the podcast. This is the GMS Magazine podcast, a podcast all about role-playing games, board games, and the people who make them, sometimes the people who play them.
And the people who love them.
Yeah, definitely the people who love them, which is you and I, Chris. I am Paco Garcia.
And this is Chris Diaz from DSX Machina. How has been your week, sir?
Well, I don't know yet because it's Monday and it's early to say, but this is the Monday when we come back to work all the hours in the world. Because during the summer, we work only in brackets, 8 till 3. Now, I either work 8 till 5 or 9 till 6. So,
which is the standard work day for us all the time. Yes. Like I said, when I was working at the longest I ever worked was when I was working at a tire shop where I would be working from 8 o'clock to about 8 o'clock. I was working anywhere from 11 to 12 hours. Yeah, I never do that.
Retail is rubbish.
Yeah.
But
although I've worked probably 50, 60 hours this week. So there's a local farm called Desert Hills run by a bunch of wonderful, wonderful people from Mexico. And they bring these big trucks to a parking lot and basically drive through, write down what you want, and then we'll load this stuff into your car dirt cheap. I don't know if you have anything like this in where you are, but where you can go, like there are farmers markets, obviously. You must have farmers markets where it's just all the local farmers are selling their produce and local craft. Do you have that?
Not very often, not in Spain. In the UK, yes, and I used to love them. But here in Spain, they are not as popular.
Yeah. So, but this one, they don't come to the farmers market. They create a market and you come to them. And I noticed that they had they have hot peppers and hot peppers are kind of hard to find in large quantities. So I decided that I was going to go there and load up, not realizing how much I had. Beyond the fact that they absolutely loved my sports car, I got $175 worth of produce, which accounted to about 15 boxes of peppers. And I've spent the better part, I would probably say 40 or 50 hours over the last week of separating and doing various things with these peppers. And some of these are like, I have 6 boxes of green. I had 6 boxes of green peppers, a bunch of shishito peppers. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. I have a full box of these. It's AJIAMARILLO. Ají Amarillo. It's a Peruvian.
Well, considering that I'm dyslexic and I can't spell, let me open Word.
Yeah.
Other word processors available. And spell that to me again slowly.
AGI.
AGI.
J is in Jason.
Oh,
AJI.
AJI.
Yep, new word. And then AM. AR. ILLO.
Ají amarillo.
I'm sorry, what?
Ají amarillo.
Ají amarillo. Ají, okay.
No, not ají.
Ají.
You need to do as if you're going to spit your phlegm, and that's the right sound.
Ají
amarillo.
Amarillo.
Yeah.
Ají amarillo. So I have a box of those peppers. They're very hot. They're yellow. I have a bunch of Anaheim, poblanos, and 2 boxes of jalapenos. So I've been making jalapeno wine jelly, white, red, and rosé. I made 3 different types of hot sauces. One with the ají, and another one with the Anaheim, some poblano, shishito. I made one that got a mix of apples, some onions, some garlic in there as well. And I have 3 buckets full of this hot sauce, and I'm waiting for the bottles to arrive. And then I'm making my good old-fashioned Portuguese pepper paste, although I'm making it with the green peppers rather than the red peppers, which will be a travesty to some people.
Maybe.
So that is what I have been doing. I've been posting photos of my progress, but yes, I have on my table over there about 30 to 40 jars of various preserves, jellies, and condiments, which is totally not game related, but that was my week.
And just as the last thing, I find it very hilarious how you guys in North America keep on saying jalapenos.
Or you want to call it jalapenos?
Jalapenos.
Jalapeno.
Jalapenos. Jalapenos.
Of course, I always find it fascinating. By the way, I was going to plan as I swing this into something that's cognizant to our conversation, our normal conversation. I did not realize. Well, I did realize, but I find it interesting that the name of a pepper completely changes the moment it's dried.
Okay.
You know. So in case people don't know what I'm talking about, a fresh jalapeno is a chipotle when it's dried. A poblano becomes an ancho pepper when it's dried, right? And Anaheim becomes a Colorado, and so forth. There is only one board game that I ever could find. Actually, I think there's two. There's two board games regarding hot peppers. There's one called Scoville, which is relatively well known. But I had a friend who is a professional hot sauce maker. He now makes meat pies. And he's a chef. Okay. And we were going to design a hot sauce making board game. But it never really got together. It was about 80%. Like, we had the engine, we had the cards, we just didn't get the prototyping. And I basically said, I'll work on it at 50-50 with you, but I won't be stuck holding on to the whole project. And I felt that I was holding on to the whole project. Oh. So I focused on other things. And of course, Naramata was a hard project for me. I was just, apprehensive getting into another one. Okay. But I'm still surprised to this day that no one has made a hot sauce making board game.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump into this. I don't have an awful lot of news other than the fact that the Spiel app has started to update the list of vendors who are going to come. And I'm finding very interesting that very, very few RPG companies are there in the list. And the reason why I'm taking a look at this is because I'm working with Meeple on Board, and I'm trying to both find new games that we could license and new homes for the games that we license. So I need to take a look in Spiel, because being such an international fair, maybe there will be some really cool publishers that will be interested. So anyway, I'm taking a look at this, and there are 84 companies listed as running RPGs, as in publishing or creating RPGs. However, once you get rid of people like manufacturers, who are also listed as RPG companies because they may print books, or scenery makers or dice makers, there are a lot fewer than 84. I think we are down to 59, most of which are German. There are barely any American RPG companies coming to Spiel. There are just a handful of UK companies that come to Germany. And I don't think there is a single Asian RPG publisher coming to Spiel, which is...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Surprising.
Yeah. I know I've seen in the past some people from Japan. I remember I didn't get it because I couldn't understand the word, as you can imagine. But there was a role-playing game about having your own boy band. Which, that must be such an amazing relationships-based role-playing game where the bass player competes with the drummer to be the cool guy in the band, whilst the singer has to be fighting with the guitar player who keeps pushing the singer to sing louder and for longer, because that's what the audience wants. So that sort of thing, that sort of scenarios, I think it must be absolutely amazing. But I haven't seen that many RPG firms at Spiel this year. But it's at the moment pretty huge. I already have about 50 Asian firms that I need to contact and see how many of them I can interview. And this is a big call. If you are going to be at Spiel, I would absolutely love to see you there. So please send an email, podcast@gmsmagazine.com, and see if we can do something. This year we're going to be sponsored by Meeple on Board, and they've given us some space in their booth so we can set up the cameras
That's awesome.
and have a proper space to do the interviews rather than having to improvise where we're going to be showcasing the games, which although we've loved doing it in the past, I think this year is going to increase the quality of the videos immensely. So we are super excited.
Nice.
But that also comes with some disappointing news. Thanks to the new management of Spiel, to which I have already replied. Because I went to Spiel for the first time in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea where I was going. So I just went with the flow with my friend Michael, and I just followed him along. The following year, though, I applied for a press pass, which they very kindly gave me. And I have been receiving a press pass every year I've gone since, except this year, where
Oh, really?
I received an email saying that my request has been declined. Even though I had received a pass in 2022, but this year we didn't meet the requirements. So I replied saying, hey, I did receive a pass last year. Could you please reconsider? And they basically come back saying, no, we have very limited number of press passes to give and you are not eligible. But at no point whatsoever, they've said who is eligible and why. Even though we've sent the links to our interviews, we have over 200 interviews recorded at Spiel over the years.
Yeah, quite well made too. I mean, you've actually have really good production quality.
Every single year, it's about 40 to 45 interviews. But furthermore, which is why I replied, and this is why I find it disappointing, not having the press pass doesn't stop me from going to Spiel.
No, exactly.
But it is annoying for two main reasons. One is that we don't get access to the whole half an hour before the public.
Yeah, you get to go in early. Yeah, that's one thing I know. Yeah,
and that is very handy. Okay, it's not a deal breaker, but it is very handy because by 10 o'clock we can be at the place where we're going to be doing the interviews and get started right away. Without having to navigate the crowds. And secondly, they have a press launch where you can go have a seat, have a drink, and they have a few lockers so you can store your equipment overnight.
Oh.
Now that we are going to miss. We take in the region of 5,000 to 6,000 euros in equipment every year in cameras, lights, memory cards, so on and so forth. And this year, we're not going to have anywhere secure to store it, and we're going to have to be bringing it backward and forward.
Yeah, you have to take it back to the hotel and back to the hotel
every single day, and that is irritating. But again, that is just an irritation. What I find most disappointing is small channels like mine, we have always been treated equally as professionals by Spiel, like any other news outlet. To feel that we cannot count on Spiel anymore for that is disappointing.
There's a bit of gatekeeping there, yeah.
Very much so, because the work that we do doesn't reflect the number of subscribers that we have and vice versa. I think me, and not just me, but a number of people like me do great work, even if they don't have a huge number of subscribers. And in my case, I'm going to speak about this for myself, not for anybody else. I specialize over the last couple of years in a very specific market, a market that has it incredibly difficult to market their games and get any kind of exposure. If you go
and the fact that a lot of those you just mentioned that a lot of those gum companies aren't even coming down and not showing up at these events now. Well, you were just saying about the Asian just a few minutes ago. Well, go on. Let it finish.
Yeah, no. I mean, some of the Asian companies come 1 year and they never come back again. That's the truth. But right now, there are more than ever. More and more companies are coming. But if you go to any of these companies, to the Board Game Geek, and you take a look at their games, Some of them will barely have any videos, if any at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's very few of us, and some of them will not have any videos in English. There are very, very few of us who look after those people. Stopping us from going to Spiel, making it harder for us, means that you're making it harder for the people who come to the show. Because if I decided I'd rather spend my time at a show that treats me better, that's it. 40 people will get no coverage whatsoever. And I know that my videos only get a handful of views. A handful of views are better than none at all.
Yeah.
So I find it disappointing that not giving press passes is going to have absolutely zero impact on the finances of the company that organizes Spiel, but it could have some impact on the people who actually go to the show. So I have no clue what on earth they're thinking or why they're doing this, but I'm finding it, it is irritating and disappointing.
Yeah, I know that. Like, I don't know. It's not really related, but I know that when Shucks was doing their thing, like before, Shucks usually had a day, which was all just the entire place was just independent. They had an independent day. Like, instead of paying the absolutely obscene amounts of money for a big booth, there was one day where you could pay for small booths, and it was just for one day, but it was just this one section. So it gave people a reason to come on this day because the entire event would shift and focus on independent smaller companies and not on the big ones that would effectively been monopolizing the entire event. But it seems unfortunate that this is also true with almost all the conventions. Money pays, and whoever pays gets the most attention, and they kind of do gatekeep, and it creates a situation where smaller vendors and smaller journalists and smaller companies just don't get exposure because there's no desire within the structure of the convention to showcase smaller talent. I mean, this is one of those situations where that's why I've always liked fan conventions that have artist alleys, because it gives you a reason to interact with smaller vendors rather than coming in for the big ones. My problem, which has been the observation that yes, the convention sets aside space for cheap booths for artists, but I've been noticing more and more that the people attending don't care about them either, which becomes a frustration for me because there's nothing the convention can do. You can't convince people to be interested in small vendors and small people, which can be a little annoying.
Very. Okay, well, that's it. That's my little rant, and I think that brings this first part of the podcast to an end.
Well, did you have? I mean, you were talking about the writing thing.
Yeah,
you mentioned.
and exactly. And welcome to part 2, where we're going to be talking about something very, very, very controversial that's happened over the last, well, now, because I've seen it only today, I have to say. But let me get what has happened exactly, which is like, oh my effing hell, God, what on effing are you, Nanowrimo? And yes,
is that how it's NaNoWriter?
Nanowrimo.
Yeah, Rhymer. Yeah, it's a. I think the spelling and the way they spell it always trips my ADHD up, and I always get confused in how it's supposed to be pronounced.
I think it's National November Writing Month or something.
Oh yeah, I know what it stands for, but the actual abbreviation or the acronym I never could figure out.
Okay, humans, spoiler, this has got to do with AI. Dun, dun, dun.
Shocking.
Yeah. So I've seen a post today in Facebook, which people are absolutely frothing at the mouth, and I understand completely why. Which NaNoWrimo, for those of you who maybe don't know about this, but NaNoWrimo is an organization that organizes this writing competition in which over the period of November, just for a month, you have to write a novel that must be at least 45 to 50, no, I think it's 50,000 words or more. But it has to be written originally from scratch, beginning on the 1st of November and finishing on the last day of the month. And then there is a competition, and I think one of them gets published, which is a great deal, and it's fun. I've done it once, and I really loved it. And I wish I had the time to do it more often, but I don't. So, Nanowrimo, though, has decided to release a statement. What is Nanowrimo's position on artificial intelligence AI? And they asked GPT, and GPT said, I'm guessing, okay, this is joking. Now I'm going to read you the statement because it's short and it's amazing. NaNoWriMo does not explicitly support any specific approach to writing, nor does it explicitly condemn any approach, including the use of AI. NaNoWriMo's mission is to provide a structure, community, and encouragement to help people use their voices, achieve creative goals, and build new worlds on and off the page. We fulfill our mission by supporting the humans doing the writing. Please see this related post, there's a link in there, that speaks to our overall position on non-discrimination with respect to approaches to creativity, writers' resources, and personal choice. And they continue. We also want to be clear in our belief that the categorical condemnation of artificial intelligence has classist and ableist undertones, and that questions around the use of AI tie to questions around privilege. Ouch.
Now, you mentioned that, but I'm really curious to know what your thoughts on that last little piece is before I comment.
Okay, my thoughts are that NaNoWriMo's people don't know how to write very well, to be perfectly honest, because I think I know where they're going with this, but my God, that is the most ridiculously stupid way of putting it. I think what I want to believe, I want to believe that where they're going with this is that using AI by people who need it, it's okay. Who could need it? For instance, people like me who are dyslexic and need it in order to make sure that there are fewer spelling and grammatical mistakes. Or, for example, people like me, who English is not my main language and my command of the grammar may not be as good. Or people who don't have the knowledge or the education to be able to write at a level, for lack of a better word, that would put their writing in a category that would be able to compete with other people who are more capable. Okay? Or better form and informed. Now, the other thing is that the problem with this statement, which is why it's so badly written, is that it immediately is enabling people to use ChatGPT to write. And I think that is absolutely obscene. If you're going to enter a competition and all you have to offer is something written out of prompts, that is obscene. That's dreadful. That is absolutely dreadful. No matter how good you are at writing, no matter how well you can speak or write or read, but if all you have is a bunch of prompts turned into a novel, that is absolutely horrible. However, and this is where I think they should have gone and specified a little bit, tools like Grammarly or DeepL Translator, they use AI at their core.
Yeah, once again, yeah, exactly, yeah.
People like me need it. Most writers need it and could do with it. Because if I want to have a character who is Polish or Russian or German, and I want to have some expressions that I don't know how to say in those languages, the use of DeepL will be incredibly useful. For somebody like me, who oftentimes mix Spanish and English grammar in his sentences, using Grammarly is so useful. So I want to believe that what NaNoWrimo is saying here is the use of things like Grammarly or DeepL should be okay, and we shouldn't be condemning that. Whether people want to use them later on or not is a different matter altogether, but we shouldn't be condemning that. But leaving that completely blank They also say that they don't condemn ChatGPT for the use of generation of novels. And quite frankly, if you write a novel using ChatGPT, I'm not going to think very highly of you. That's my take.
Okay. Like I said, I was making a point to really, really listen. So I didn't want to be a situation where I was waiting to talk. I agree 100%. And I think my biggest annoyance, which is something I mentioned on a panel at a convention a few months ago, was a lot of people, they conflate or they kind of combine all aspects of artificial intelligence because it's easy to say AI because AI is the trigger word, not I disagree with generative large language model systems, large language LLMs, I think it's called, where which is what we have when it comes to Midjourney and ChatGPT. Now, the problem with me is the fact that, yeah, absolutely. I use Grammarly. And I've mentioned the fact that how Nick and I have used image extension. We look, oh, we need an extra inch off of this background. So we were just like, well, it's just easier. Just get an image extension to give us that extra inch of that backdrop because no one's going to care about it anyway. And I've been very honest and upfront about where I think AI has been useful and effective. My problem is that even with the generative models, they have shown, like, for example, if I'm a person that'll stare at something and I can't start it until I have a name for it. And sometimes generating a name for something can be very, very difficult. So I'm like, hey, give me 50 names for what this city could be called. And now there have been name generators on the internet for 100 years. Since I think they created I think there was they made Pong and then they made I need a name for a city. Like that's how quickly I think these have been out. There have been fantasy name generators. There's a fantasy name generator website that's been online for probably 20 years. And so I've always known how useful those can be. But when it comes to saying, now I have messed with it because I have been curious to see how well the narrative composition, as you say, the generative writing, and it's creepy. But for me, and this is where it's gone to a point, and I was talking about this at the panel, how obvious ChatGPT can be. CJ Shira, who's a very famous author whose name I just butchered, who wrote a lot of really great novels. She posted just something recently, and it was just something cool, and somebody had written, and she didn't write it herself. But I looked at just the structure of just the sentence and went, "That's AI." And the fact that I can't use words, like there's certain trigger words now. The moment I see anyone saying the word testament, stark contrast, verdant field, stuff like this, I look at it and go, "That's an AI generated section that has generated content in there," because a really skillful person can point that out. So, but the issue for me is that very few people, I think, have that capacity. So I think also Nanowrimo is basically saying, look, they can hide behind, we're not going to attack this, but there's also a point where we don't know whether or not we can, like, it's really easy to spot AI art sometimes and then call that person out and then prove it physically how that image is clearly AI. It's really hard to accuse someone of having an AI written script because the unless you pick up that pattern like I do. Like I've accused 2 or 3 people of using AI writing in their scripts, and they get, of course, incredibly defensive and say that's absolutely not true. And I have no way of proving it because all I can say is from my experience working with the system, that I know what the telltale signs are. And look, if you're going to do it, just acknowledge it. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to look at you negatively, but I think you should be upfront, honest. If you're upfront and honest, I'll accept it, and I won't look down on you. I'll respect you for being honest if you employ some generative content in your system, regardless of what that may be. Just be honest about it. And so, my issue is that it's difficult. It's more difficult to prove. It's easy to spot, but more difficult to prove that something is written through AI. And there's a fantastic author, his name escapes me, he's Canadian, and he talks about how he spots AI, but it does it because AI is very surface. It'll describe something, it can't figure out metaphor, it can't integrate that moment into the overall scene. So there are ways to do it. People who know my style's changed quite a bit. My style is so antithetical to AI. Like my style and the AI style do not work. If I were to write a section and write an AI version of it, you will look, well, that's clearly not the same author. That's clearly cannot be the same author. And you're right, because I can't, and then AI has a style. And if you want to write in that style, then that's fine. But it's like the people who do digital art. It's like it's really hard now for them to pass off their art as being legit, because people will look at it and go, oh, that's AI. And like, no, it's not. So that's my issue with it. Nano could have worded it better. I would have said, look, we completely condemn the use of generative AI, but there is virtually no way for us to legally go and ban people because we have no way of proving it.
And also, there is something very dangerous in here, and is that I have seen people writing whose command of the vernacular is not good enough, that looks like AI. So that is another problem. So I think Nanowrimo's made a mistake. I think they have ruined a fair chunk of their reputation. And I think they have highlighted and probably even encouraged an awful lot of people to use tools like ChatGPT to create their work, and thus lessening the value.
I don't know if they've encouraged it, but they've shown that they're not going to go after you. I think that I think the NaNoWrimo project was going to be inundated with AI regardless of what stance they were going to make, because I think a lot of people think they can get away with it, because I think a lot of people can get away with it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, but I think tacitly they are definitely encouraging people to do it. Because the moment you say you have no problems from us, it's the same as saying, by all means, do use it. It's going to be all right after all. So I think tacitly they are encouraging people to use it, which I do have a problem with, because it's going to put an awful lot of people at a very, very unfair advantage. Because even if you take ChatGPT as a ideas generator, say that you generate your novel, and then you're just going to spend a month rewriting that, that's already done a huge, huge chunk of the work for you.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely and completely against what NaNoWrimo is about, and to be honest, what the craft of writing should be about. I understand copy editor or copy, creator using ChatGPT to generate an adverts for a firm, because whatever is a soulless sort of shit. But for a novel, no, I don't see it. So yeah, that's the controversy of the week. So people, what do you think before we end this section of the podcast and jump on to the next to do reviews? What do you think? Please let us know in the comments in Spotify if you're listening to this there, or on YouTube if you're also listening to this in YouTube, or email me podcast@gmsmagazine.com and let us know what you think, because I would truly love to hear your thoughts on this matter.
Well, I will add one or two, just one more thing onto the news section. Okay. The first, obviously, is D&D Beyond had a video that they released on IGN last week when they were talking about their new push. They were talking about D&D Beyond, the new digital VTT system, which looks very good. It's very, very pretty. They talked about the new books. They pushed more about how the books are going to actually teach people how to play the game. New artwork, the books will be a lot larger. Player's Handbook, DMG this year, Monster Manual, I think probably early next year, and some more books coming out next summer. Looking at the surface content, looking at the page they flipped, because they haven't posted much when it comes to playtesting in months. So there's not a lot of talk about what's going on. We have the preliminary stuff. A lot of people, they're still calling it the next iteration, this refined version. They're not calling it 5.5. They're not calling it 6E. And looking at the presentation of the books, I was surprised at how familiar it is. The monsters look exactly like the monsters we've seen. The character classes look about the same. The weapons seem to work exactly the same. This certainly feels like a 5.5, not a 6. And even then, it doesn't seem to be that much of a deviation. They've added a new system of rules called Mastery, which means if you have a certain type of ability in your class, you get to do a specific ability. You get to do something different based on the weapon you wield. That's the only new mechanic I saw. It doesn't appear that the mechanics of gameplay have actually changed. And if that's the situation, that basically will mean that 5.5 and 5E will still be mechanically core compatible compared to 3.5 to 4 or 4 to 5, which were completely incompatible in every way. This is good news to me because it means that it'll translate to 5.5 being 5E backwards compatible. And the fact that could I take my 5E class and play with the 5.5 class? Unless they specifically say, no, you can't, there's an imbalance because of how the mechanics work, I don't think they're going to say that. And as a preview, we have an interview with someone that's doing, I wouldn't say a competitor, but a alternative version to what they have been talking about D&D Beyond. That's Faith Elizabeth Lilly. And we're going to be talking about World Tree. And of course, Faith was part of D&D Beyond. She was a former tabletop rules and content producer through to senior producer at D&D Beyond. And we're going to be talking about World Tree, talking about what her thoughts are. When I asked her about this, she said she'll have to put a "don't get too spicy" Post-it note on her desk because I am sure she has thoughts. So that was the first thing I'll talk about. That's the only thing I really had, actually, just to add on before we go into the reviews, the D&D Beyond thing. I am not terribly worried as of yet. I think they are very intentionally distancing themselves from the idea that this is an incompatible system. Recently, they did admit that they weren't going to allow homebrew content, but it looks like they have stepped back and they are going to allow homebrew content, which means they will allow people to tweak their system. That being said, looking at this VTT, it is sizing up to be the prettiest VTT out there. But the biggest question is, do people want this out of their game? And I think I bring this up with regarding to Magic the Gathering, which is a question I'm going to bring up with Faith. And basically, there's been very numerous variations of Magic the Gathering, Magic Online, the Magic the physical game, and there's been maybe a half a dozen Magic Online console games, video games. And all of these have either vanished or failed or never generate. And yet Magic the Online, the original basic core translation of the physical product, is still available. I went on to Magic Online just recently, and my decks and my cards are all still there. I could get there and play it right away. And I find it fascinating that Wizards of the Coast keeps on trying to reboot and resell and repackage Magic Online as another game, and people still reject it and go back to Magic Online because it is just a core, perfect translation of the card game without any fancy animation, without anything stupid, and it still works, and it's still online. So I find it fascinating that they're trying to do the same thing with D&D. They're trying to give D&D a big splash, and I think a lot of people will go, hey, that's cool. I'm going back to Foundry because that's what I know.
I don't know what D&D is going to do or where it's going to go, but to be perfectly honest, I don't think I care anymore. I in fact released a video not long ago.
I saw that. You posted a video about D&D's relevance. Go on.
Yeah, well, I just give up on D&D. I have loved D&D for generations. I have played every single edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And I am not interested in keep playing it. It's nothing to do with anything other than the system doesn't really scratch my itches anymore.
Mm.
D20 just doesn't feel open and flexible and exciting anymore. There are systems that really makes me excited to roll the dice, and D&D is not it. Given what you just said about 5 and the next edition being so similar, I may still get the settings because I love the settings. I love Ravenloft and I love Dragonlance and I love Planescape, and I may be getting that sort of book because I enjoyed reading them. But I don't think I will be playing, well, any of them, to be honest. So freely.
Well, I certainly hope that's not indicative of the future, because that's still my scratch. I still got to make money off of it.
No, and don't get me wrong. I will keep supporting creators who make money out of it, and I really hope that people keep having an awful lot of fun and enjoying D&D for many years to come. I really do. I have no beef with the game, none at all. I don't even think it's a bad game. It's just a game that doesn't feel exciting to me anymore. The recent adventures that I've played, they just felt like, hey, go here, fight, come back, report. Hey, go there, fight, come back, and find that you have to find another fight because somebody's, kind of invaded us while you were away. So keep fighting.
Well, that's it. That's more about the unimaginative levels of certain GMs and the adventures that are written. I mean, I really love GMs that create whole worlds that they play into, but not a lot of GMs are like that.
So that's why I'm done. I absolutely love Free League, and they've been very good to me. They have anything and everything I need. But to be honest, I also miss reading some of the books that other people I know and love have published, like Cubicle 7 or Modiphius, even more Chaosium. I haven't read a Chaosium book for a very long time. A Pelgrane Press. I love those guys. And I have so many indie games that I haven't spoken about yet. The Osprey game are such an amazing company.
Which reminds me, we have to invite Modiphius to talk about the new Mass Effect board game.
Oh,
sorry, off topic.
Yeah, no, that's not off topic at all. That is something that's been in my head all freaking day. So don't you worry, I have people to contact. So anyway, yeah, that's me and D&D done. We'll see where they take D&D beyond. Now, let's finish with this section so we can jump onto the reviews, which are going to be very quick because we've been going for 42 minutes.
Yep, I got one. You got one or two? I've got Boonlake by Alexander Pfister from Great Western Trail and Blackout Hong Kong and so forth. And he is known for some really complex, very neat mechanics. Boonlake is probably his most mechanically similar to Great Western Trail. You have a engine builder, unlike Great Western Trail, which has deck building elements. This one doesn't have deck building, but there's definitely an engine building element. However, there's been some interesting speculation from fans that think that Boonlake is somewhat post-apocalyptical because it involves the rebuilding of civilization along this river. The game takes an idea from another game I really like that no one talks about called Ulm, where you basically use the whole land around a river, but at the same time you're sailing along that river. So there's a bit of a race. But this game's a bit different in the fact that the boat, where you move along the boat, basically gives you like where you land gives you a quick little resource boost. But it's primarily there as a timer. Halfway through the boat's river route, you do a scoring. You do another scoring at the end of the route. You then do a loop and do the whole thing over again. And so in total, there are 4 scoring with 1 at endgame scoring. A couple interesting mechanics. One, you get to determine how you score at each of those phases. There are 4 ways to score, and you get to determine which order you want to score. And that depends on how you've built up. There are like 5 regions on the board, and each scoring is indicative of how well you have colonized one of those regions. And so going ahead what's going to get scored And so you can plan accordingly. You can also invest, basically gamble in one of those scoring, saying, I'm going to do well with this scoring area. So I'm going to put a multiplier on that. So I know I'm going to score the most in this category. So I'm going to put my multiplier right there. So it's a very neat idea that you can plan how to maximize your points. It has your traditional 100 loop scoring tracker with indicators for 1 and 200. So I'm like, okay, is this game going to be like Tapestry where things can get out of control? The answer is yes, it will absolutely get out of control depending on how you do things. And because everything costs resources, you have these unlocks and so forth, and they all start feeding in on each other. And there is one where you could put down a cow. That cow will get you a point for every factory that's adjacent to it. And how many points it gives you is dependent on how many cows you've put out and how many factories you put out, which means the more factories and cows you put out, the more points you get for their placement. And like this can get crazy because I mean it's basically a multiplier. So 2 points could become 20 or 30 for the exact same figure that you put down because of how you built up your engine. That's how the engine builder works. There is, however, there's some neat little things in it. It's got lots of little tokens, lots of little beeples, and a point system. And you got these wonderful, neat cards. It also has a very cool, what's it called, a rondale. So you can put it in such a way you can see it there. You have a rondale. And the rondale basically means you're picking an action. That action then goes to the bottom of the rondale, which means it becomes more difficult to acquire. Mm-hmm. So you want to be able to pick certain abilities when they're high up in the rondel because they won't cost as much. And well, actually, the ones at the top cost more than the ones in the bottom, but the ones at the bottom will cost you points. And so you're trying to figure out, of course, once you do an action, it changes the order in which you do things. And so players are constantly playing off of this rolling set of actions, which is the game's kind of core mechanic. And it's a very neat idea. And it allows you to basically put down meeples. Meeples can be upgraded to houses. They can be upgraded to those factories I mentioned before. You can put down cows. You can get more cards. You can get some more money. You can upgrade. You can obviously muck around with that engine building player board. You can, and resources are not done by tokens. Resources are done very much like Tapestry, where your resources are never used up. You just have resources. So if your resources level is at level 2, it's always at level 2. You always have 2 resources, which means if you spend them, you're still at level 2. So that tells you which cards that you can play on your turn. It's a very cool game. I would normally say I put it above Great Western Trail because Great Western Trail has so much busy work that sometimes it can get a little frustrating. This game is still as long as Great Western Trail. There is, however, one glaring problem, and that is the point system is not clear. In fact, we had to go to the website and go to the Q&A on Board Game Geek to try to find how the point system worked, because we, on numerous occasions, thought this cannot be the rule. We looked at the book, it explained it and go, it says this. We went online, people said, yeah, this is how it is. But even then, even people were just like, it's confusing. And this is where the whole confusing plate, and I'll explain it in detail here. So I said, if you have a cow, you get a point for every factory that's adjacent to that cow. And you can have 2 or 3 cows adjacent to that factory. However, if you put a factory on the other side of that cow, so you have 2 factories on who are adjacent, that balloons. So as I said, you get a cow, you get like a 1 point per factory per cow. So if you had, say, 3 cows on a tile and you had a factory, you could get 6 points. But you would also score that opposite factory, which means it becomes almost exponential, which means at the beginning, you could say, oh, this cost me 6 points. And at the end, that one location will give you 30 points, which is insane. And I'm thinking, like, is that right? And I realized it probably was, because in the game, they specifically say, they don't say you can't put 2 factories in a region, but they say if you do, you suffer a negative 5-point penalty. Now that would seem like a big penalty, but then I looked and said, yeah, but I'm getting 30 points for doing that. So instead of them saying you'd only put one factory in one region, which would have been the smarter rule, they said you take a penalty for doing so. But if you do put down that second factory and you put all your cows around those two factories, you'll basically win the game because no one else can compete with that point scoring thing. And we are looking around going, this cannot be correct, but it seems to be correct. And at the end of the game, I did not just cross the 100 point or the 200 point. I had crossed the 300 point marker. And my lovely wife was at 150, 180, something like that, because of that one rule that I was able to maximize. And so by the end, on top of that, the last point scoring section said you get points for how well you've colonized this one area. Well, I put my multiplier on that. So I got even more points. So I end up in excess of 300 points. And I'm staring at it going, this cannot be legal. Like, this cannot be how this game works. But the manual doesn't say you can't. It's very clear that you can do this. And when we checked online, everyone said you could. And I'm thinking, why isn't everyone doing this? Like, well, you take a 5-point penalty. I go, yeah, but I got 100 points for doing it. It doesn't seem fair.
No. I think that is a very good reflection of capitalist corruption.
Yeah,
Whereas
it's showing me that
you can get away with committing crimes for the value of hundreds of millions because the fines are going to be mere pennies, comparatively speaking. So that's
I have proven capitalism with Alexander Pfister's Boonlake, which it's kind of like when somebody created the Landlord's game to point out how screwed up Monopoly is, and then somebody bought the rights, made the game Monopoly, and said that you win the game for making a Monopoly, and the person who created the Landlord's game was just like, that's the complete opposite of what I was trying. This is supposed to be a game about journeying, rebuilding civilization, and I immediately turned into Elon Musk and corrupted into a system where I get the most amount of money. I don't feel, now that having this conversation with you, I don't feel good about playing this game. I feel dirty, and I also now to think about it, looking at the cover, it does have this wonderful, like, very peaceful flower on this blue serene lake, and this very clearly ugly industrial city on the cover, which I'm kind of looking at, like, maybe that's the subtle message. Maybe Alexander Pfister will contact me and say, congratulations, you both won and lost the game.
Oh, well,
that's my review. I would give it I would say a 7.5 out of 10. I think if we're going to play the game again, we might have to throw in a homebrew rule saying that you just cannot put two factories in a region. That's not a negative point. You literally can't. Otherwise, that's just a strategy I'm just going to repeat every single time we play the game, because that's how you're going to get the most points.
Okay, good. So that ends this section of the one review. And now we're going to go for the second review, which I'm going to do Walking in Burano Roll and Write.
I love your review of the first one. So I'm looking forward to the Roll and Write.
I'm going to do this one very quickly because, quite frankly, I don't know what to make of this game. Okay, in Walking in Burano, which is an absolutely beautiful game, you have to.
Is it beautiful?
Yeah, you have to create your own street in Burano, which has some very specific rules, like you cannot have two buildings of the same color, or you get a penalty. They have to.
That's true.
Yeah, they have to have three floors: the ground floor, first floor, or second floor, or first floor, second floor, and third floor, as you would say in North America, but you're wrong, but never mind that. And each house is going to have a number of features like flowers or cats or chimneys. And then you have to invite people to live in. And those people are going to value the houses depending on the characteristics of the icons that they own. Like, for instance, if they have flowers or cats or chimneys, they're going to give you some points. If you invite Santa Claus to live in your street, then Santa Claus is going to reward how many chimneys your street has, because that's what he uses to get in and out of the houses. That's not creepy. That's not creepy.
That mechanic's in the game.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So, we loved walking in Burano. It looks absolutely gorgeous on the table. It's very simple to learn. It's very fun to play. Now, roll and write. What does it bring on the table? It brings dice and it brings paper that you write on. But the essence of the game is the same. You have to create a street in Burano. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have a number of dice that you roll at the beginning of the round. And then the players are going to bid for those dice. So, depending on what number the dice have, you will be able to surround with a circle some of the characteristics of the buildings. Like, for instance, if you will be able to surround flowers. But if you surround flowers in a building and the building has 3 flowers, the first flower will be worth 6 points, which is already pre-pointed when you begin the game. The second flower has to be any other value than 6. And the third flower has to be of any other value than 6 and the second flower. So you better put 5 and 4, because that would be the maximum you can score. The number of cats will also have an impact on how many points you get at the end of the round of the game, so on and so forth. And then again, you have to invite people to live in your street, and depending on the items that you have circled, they're going to score a number of points or not. So, for example, the policeman will give you 5 points for every street lamp that you circle. But in order to circle those street lamps, you need to take a die of the color of the building with the value of the lamp shown in the building. For example, the green building has a street lamp with a value 1. So you would need a green die with a value 1 to be able to surround that street lamp, whereas the yellow building has a street lamp with a value 4. So you would need a yellow die with a value 4, so on and so forth. And each one of the items on the buildings contains some conditions. So again, the game is very easy to play. We got to grips with it in 10 minutes, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
However, we didn't find it as satisfying as walking in Burano for several reasons. Firstly, it felt too similar. At the end of the day, you're doing exactly the same thing with exactly the same characters, but you're using different mechanisms and mechanics to do it. So why bother? Secondly, when you play Walking in Burano, you end up with an absolutely beautiful table laid out in front of you, because the cards are colorful, are big, they're gorgeous. With the roll and write, you end up with a A5 piece of paper and an awful lot of very ugly looking circles around things. So it just doesn't feel pretty enough. Also, these sheets are finite.
So like many of them are,
yeah. So eventually you're going to have to download and print your own if you want to keep playing. Overall, it's not a bad game. It's clever, I guess, in the way that it has rethought and reimagined Walking in Burano. But it's just not as satisfying. We, the three of us who played this game, ended up thinking we might as well play Walking in Burano.
Yeah.
It's a better experience, better looking, and just as simple to play. So whereas Walking in Burano I would give it a 7.5 perhaps. Walking in Burano Roll and Write, even though it is beautifully produced, the dice are gorgeous, the box is beautiful, very simple to carry, very easy to learn, I cannot give this more than a 6.
Yeah, that's a big problem with nowadays. With when someone's like, we have to do a roll and write version of a game, like, and you end up making the same game. That's kind of like cartographers, because it's even though it's in the role player universe, it has nothing like role player. It's a completely different experience, and I kind of like the fact that they did something different.
If I hadn't played, I have to say, if I had not played Walking in Burano before I played Walking in Burano Roll and Write, I might have enjoyed this one. And if you are a roll and write fan, this is not a bad roll and write game at all. It's very, very decent. It's very good. But it just doesn't live up to Walking in Burano. And that very, very little can be done about it.
Yep, that's yeah, I totally get it. I mean, for me, what you said, the fact that I want to get Walking in Burano, I still do, but I think I'm gonna make a pass on the other game because obviously, if I have Walking in Burano, I have the best version of that theme.
Yes. However, Walking in Provence, very, very different kettle of fish. That's for the next one, though.
Teaser.
So, Walking in Provence. This is the third in the series of Walking in that I have. I don't think there are anymore. Walking in Provence puts us in the shoes of photographers who go to the lavender fields of Provence to take photographs. And each player is going to be able to take photographs with a camera or with a drone. So you can release your drone and take photographs from the top. What do you need for that? You need a lavender field. And those lavender fields are made by, let me show you, field cards.
Under no circumstances can I let my wife see or play this game.
Why?
Because if she finds out that that's the theme and this is what the real place is like, she's going to make me buy it, and then she's going to make me take her there.
When I finish with this review, you may want to buy yourself.
Okay.
This is how the game plays. We are going to have a number of goals, of missions. Those missions are threefold. One, obtain a photograph or a number of photographs with your camera. The second is take a particular photograph with your drone. And the third is just a tiebreaker to have a number of resources at the end of the game. So, for example, taking a photograph with your drone, let me take one of the cards, could be having in the same photograph 4 lavender fields, a windmill, and a sunflower field. Or having 2 houses, a church, a windmill, and a forest. And the first player to take that photograph obtains the points at the top of the card, which is the highest. The second player takes the second, and the third player takes the third. If 2 players take the same photo at the same time, then they both share the points, as in each will get the points.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, every round you have 2 cards in your hand. One of them you're going to give to the player to the left. One of them you're going to keep. And you have to place these cards on the table so you can get whatever ingredients you need to take your photograph. So, for example, this one, if I put this card one beside the other, that means that I will have 3 lavender fields and a windmill.
Right.
So if I took a photograph that needed 3 lavender fields and a windmill, I would be scoring.
Right.
You can overlap cards vertically or horizontally, but
yeah. Go ahead.
But you cannot cover the whole card.
Right.
And if a building like the church comes out, which takes 2 spaces in a card, then you cannot split the church in two.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a puzzle. Once you think you have your photograph, you have two templates.
Oh, those are cool.
That you put in front of your meeple, and they are the ones that you're going to use to say, here are all the components that make my photograph possible. If those components are within these templates, you score the point.
In many ways, that's the camera frame.
That's exactly it. So you have a square, a 5x5 square for the drone, which is flying on top of everything, and a 3x5 for the camera because you have a longer lens.
Yeah.
I cannot really explain how much we love this game without swearing. Because seriously, we fucking loved it.
Oh, nice.
It took us a while to get to grips with it. This game suffers from one thing, and is that the rules don't need to be that complicatedly written.
Right.
Playing the game is a lot simpler than the rules make it appear, which is something that with Asian games I see very often. Seriously, this game is fantastic. It is very simple to learn. I could explain this game now in about 10 minutes, flat.
Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward.
If that, it is very, very straightforward. It's beautiful on the table. It is very challenging. It can be very strategic because you can take more than one photograph at a time. And the player interaction of giving the card to the other player is fun. It's very interesting because it allows you to mess with them a little bit. And once you finish the game, you have an absolutely beautiful feel of lavender, cornfields, and buildings, windmills, and churches on your table. Scoring can be a little bit complex, but we just loved it. And even though it was all of us were playing for the first time, the winner got 64 points. I got 63. And the other player, wow, Anya, who just had it a little bit harder to get to grips with it, had 49. So it is actually well balanced for everyone. Out of the three, out of Walking in Burano on Right, and Walking in Provence, the one that we will definitely bring back to the table is Walking in Provence.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go.
Because it offers a much more sophisticated level of complexity than the other two. And it looks absolutely amazing. So seriously, if you like puzzle games with a tiny little bit of player interaction, a little bit of strategy, which is lightweight, but will really make you think, Walking in Provence is absolutely fantastic. Very, very highly recommended.
Wow, there you go. I mean, yeah, like I said, unfortunately, it proves the point that this is not a game that I can let my wife know about. It just yeah. You combine theme, location, and so forth. It'll help encourage our European trip, definitely. You know, come visit you, and they're like, "Where we're going? Where I know where we're going." I'm like, "Yep, I know where we're going," because, you know, to see that would be. Because we went to a small version of that, you know, on our honeymoon, and there was a place that she wanted to go very specifically. So,
well, I think when you come, I will take you to the rice paddies that we have nearby, and you will want to make a game about growing rice.
Yeah, but yeah,
and cooking a paella with it later.
We could. I mean, I'm definitely not going to say no to that. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good review. So out of 10, how would you rate this one?
Oh, 8, 8.5. Definitely. I'm not going to give it a 10 because I am sure that there is room for improvement that I haven't seen because I've only played the game once. But after playing the games for the first time, as the first time play, that felt super, super satisfying and left us wanting more. So yeah, an 8.
Well, there you go.
And that's it from me. I don't really have anything else because I know that we have the other sections on the game night and the recipe, but I haven't prepared anything at all. We've been talking for over an hour, and we're going to end up with 5 or 6 different slots for this episode. So
good though. So next week we'll definitely have our interview with Faith. It's going to get recorded this Wednesday, and then we'll have it up as part of our next week's episode.
Yes, indeed. Humans, thank you very much indeed for being there. Please do keep sending your comments. They're very, truly, very, very, very much appreciated. Whether you're listening in Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever. Actually, tell us, where do you listen to us, if you listen to us at all? Because we love to hear...
It'd be weird if they said, I don't listen to you. Like, how did you know, though, that we asked?
Somebody told me. Found it in LinkedIn or something. I don't know. But we'd love to hear from you. Podcast at gmsmagazine.com. I am still on Twitter, even though I barely use it anymore. I'm still on Facebook, which is the one I'm using the most, and TikTok. Well, everywhere you want me, I will be there for you forever because we love you.
And this is Chris from Deus Ex Machina. Find me on Deus Ex Machina on all social media platforms except X. And I'm even on TikTok, although I don't post nearly as much as I used to.
Until the next time, humans, thank you very, 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 very much indeed for being there. And we will talk to you very soon indeed. Take care.
Thank you.